Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we convene the fourth of 5 sessions on strategies of resistance in a time of Trump. I want to, in our reflections today, by recalling something that I've talked about before on Humanity Rising, as we've contemplated the current state of democracy. And that is something that the philosopher Plato, 2,500 years ago, talked about in his masterwork, The Republic, where he said that the fatal flaw of democracy is that there's no mechanism to ensure that the political leaders are as competent as they should be in order to lead capably. He remarked that, when you go to a doctor, you know that the doctor's been trained. You go to a cobbler to fix your shoes, you know that the shoemaker knows about shoemaking. And he says the irony of governance, particularly in a democracy, there's absolutely no criteria, except minimally. They have to be a natural born citizen, or they have to be at least 25 years old, or whatever that condition set is. But the bar is so low, anybody can rise to the realm. And this instability, says Plato, ultimately leads to the demise of democracy, because democracies in the end are reduced to polarized mob rule. And out of that emanates the tyrant. Plato saw this in Athens, which at the time of his youth was the great shining light of democracy around the world. And then it succumbed to perpetual war in the Peloponnesian War. And that culminated in the rise of what they call the tyranny and the execution of Socrates. And it was in the aftermath of that that Plato contemplated viability of a democracy. I raise this because what we're witnessing, in my view, in the United States is the demise of democracy. All of our institutions are corrupt and polarized and paralyzed. Our corporate elites are increasingly disengaged from everyday reality. Our court system no longer functions in the orientation of justice. And the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court, in preparation, it seemed, for the Trump presidency, ruled in the spring of this year, or rather in the fall of last year, that a president has complete immunity for anything that he does while he's in office in the pursuit of official duties. So Donald Trump's coming into office not only feeling completely redeemed after having lost the 2020 election, saved by God in the assassination attempts to save America, but he has the legal standing now to do literally whatever he wants. And the first 48 hours of his administration, he's signaling what it is that he intends to do. I want to make just one final comment on this situation, because I think what's exacerbating the situation is the patriarchal convulsion at the end decades of democratization and egalitarianism, as more and more ethnic and identity groups began to feel the beginnings of the freedom that democracy should be providing to everyone. I think what we see in Trump is the empire of patriarchy is striking back right at the moment that the demise of democracy is offering up the tyrant. And it's very important to realize that at the heart of patriarchy is the subordination of women, the subordination of nature, the subordination of animals, the subordination of those who are weak and vulnerable. And so it's important as we contemplate, as we did yesterday, the challenges now in the gender fluid trans community, and now how we contemplate women and peace work, is to understand that it's not specific to them. It's part of drill, baby, drill. The same disregard for the environment and the sanctity of the earth is the same mentality that is now seeking to deny women sovereignty over their own bodies, and is now the same mentality that is abrogating the Paris Agreement on climate change and going after the DEI recipients, federal bureaucracy. It's one mentality of coercive power, derived to a significant extent on the power that can be exerted over those who are vulnerable. So, in my view, this is at the heart of what Donald Trump represents for our collective polity, not only in the United States, but the world. And so the commitment that we need to make to keep democracy alive, to work for human dignity, human freedom, is now going to be under systemic threat. And that context should inform the kinds of activities and sense of community that we foster in the coming days and over the next 4 years. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Humanity Rising. I want to now turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Tom Eddington. Tom, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. As always, thank you for your opening remarks and your framing of what we're up against. And I have just a few brief comments I'd like to share before inviting our panelist, Jodie Evans, into today's conversation. I think what struck me this week is that in the face of the executive orders, in the face of the rhetoric and the comments that have been coming out of Washington, D.C., what has struck me the most is the powerful women who've stepped forward. We saw it with the Episcopal bishop here in Washington, D.C. at the National Cathedral, speaking to President Trump directly and asking for mercy, and seeing President Trump's response. And he's demanding an apology from her when she was simply asking for mercy. And on Monday, Dr. Bernice King, speaking at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, citing her father and speaking about the actions that the Trump administration has already undertaken so powerfully, so strongly. And I absolutely love that we're seeing women stepping forward and speaking truth to power and demanding that the administration recognize that their actions, their behaviors will not go unrecognized. And so with that, I'd love to invite Jodie into the conversation today. And Jodie, just so happy to have you with us today. As I frame the week, we recognize coming into the new administration, there were 4 specific audiences that the administration had targeted. And we've been addressing each of the audiences this week. So delighted to have you with us today, and would love to hear any thoughts you want to share.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be back with Humanity Rising. So I'm just back in California from being in Washington, D.C. for the last 4 days. And I just want to start with humanity. You know, it's really somehow we've gotten away from humanity. And the the issues to divide, it's where Trump derives his power. In that way, we can divide, create chaos and fear and anxiety. And then you get used by that. And, you know, I know the place because it's how CODEPINK started. Bush was frightening the American people into supporting his war on Iraq with color-coded alerts, orange, red, and yellow, you know, today, be afraid, be afraid. When there was nothing to be afraid of, it was all lies. It was all out of a PR department. And weapons of mass destruction was out of a PR department, like what would make the people most afraid? And so CODEPINK comes out of that space of let's not be afraid. Let's look at what the facts are. Let's unpack the lie that then uses the public. So, you know, the lie piece is at the core of the United States of America. And it goes back to, you know, kind of like what Jim was saying, that the violence on those most weak, weakened, because they're not weak people. They're people who really the weakness is in the person who has to have the weapon. Around the world, who is weak is who has to turn to a weapon to be in relationship. It is the non-relationship. It is the dehumanization that has already happened in the human being that is willing to use a weapon against another. And that goes back millennia, right? That goes back to deep inside of the religions that people stand on top of. So that's core to what we need to know about getting along as humans. So modernity, the war economy, the thing that the culture that we live inside of the United States, and I just want to say we're 330 million people that think we're the center of the universe, which is already a problem. We live in an empire and it makes us stupid. I had a taxi driver say, you know, remember, didn't you watch Star Wars? Empires are stupid, but the people inside the empire think they're smart. And it's so, you know, the one thing is like, we're talking about this place that's very small. But like Jim said, it's like, it's also very dangerous. And we've just watched that danger. You know, why did they drop a nuclear bomb on 2 Japanese cities? Wasn't for peace. There was already the end of a war. It was to flex for Russia. It was to show power. What is Bibi Netanyahu doing? Showing power. And we saw Biden in a conversation with a reporter say he knew this from the very beginning, that Biden has already said in his dementia of not understanding what he was saying, that Bibi told me before he did it, that his goal was to flatten Gaza like Hiroshima. Had nothing to do with Hamas, had nothing to do with anything but pure terror and violence. So I just want us to start there. That is us, those people who live in the United States of America, who are responsible for slavery, the last country to let go of slavery, who decimated an indigenous culture. That is like the heartbeat. So I'm going to take issue for starts with Jim saying, let's get back to democracy. That's like making America great again. That's some acceptance that the deformity of structure that we live inside of has anything to do with democracy. Because, and by agreeing to that word, we've allowed this to happen. So the wedge issues that you're talking about, those are the issues that divide, that create the capacity for someone like Trump to go into power. A wonderful woman on Twitter the other day said, I knew that white males were going to come and take back over power in America. I just never thought they would be so useless and stupid. It's just like the really capacity to look at what is core to pivoting from where we are, to look at what is. And I say right now, that is so important, and it's so hard because it's really ugly, and we all participated in it. We all kind of made agreements around things that we shouldn't have. And you speak of, Sister King, and you speak of the beautiful Reverend who did speak truth to power. But where have we been silent? Where have we not spoken the darkness in the room while it sat there so that others could see? We don't speak. Code Pink isn't in the halls of Congress every day because we think a member of Congress is going to listen to what we say. We are there every single day to shine a light so you can see what is there, so you can see the hatred in their hearts, the violence in their hearts, and the stupidity of their thinking. And quit giving your power over to Washington. It's dumb. And the whole system is dumb. You can't have democracy in inequality. We know that. Democracy has to exist where the people are equal. We have the greatest inequality in history that has been created by the people in Washington. The Democrats have created that because they haven't done what they were tasked to do, to take care of the people. They've taken care of capital. So, it's about humanity, and it's not about dividing us. It's like as many beautiful women as you can name. I can name some women that I can't even look at that, sat in the UN and raised their hand against the entire world for the United States of America to support a genocide. Well, that's not democracy, kids. If you think we live in a country that believes in democracy, and you look at the UN, and the entire world says end a genocide, and the hand up is the United States of America Black woman who's been co-opted to be used for violence and hate. So when we boil it down to these issues that therefore we have to deal with, it's kind of like looking back at Germany and said, when they came for them, I didn't speak. When they came for them, I didn't speak. And now they come for me and there's no one else to speak. We have to move back to unpacking the lives that we live in and understanding that we've got to go back. We've got to recreate. We cannot stand on violence. 60% of US taxpayer dollars goes to war and militarism, the number one industrial cause of climate change. And we're all living through that. And we're pretending we're not. We're not talking about it enough. We're not saying no enough. Look at the snows in Florida. I was looking at people I know in the South that there were so many automobile accidents last night because they don't know how to drive in the snow. Not their fault. It's also not a lot of people's fault what they believe. They've been indoctrinated to hate, indoctrinated to lies, indoctrinated to things so that they can feel special in a place they don't feel special. So if we look back to Germany to try to understand fascism as we try to understand our own fascism that has fully, flowered. It's been coming. We knew it was there. We didn't try to stop anything that was creating it. So, inequality is one of the things, but loneliness was core in Germany. We live in a country that is lonely. We've been created to be separate from each other, from the system we live inside of. And I call it a culture. I call it the war economy culture. It is a culture that separates us, that makes us believe and identify with addictions that are forced on us to survive in the culture. And some of those, Tom, are to be silent, because if we speak up, we're kicked out. We read this morning that Columbia University has given Trump a list of people that should be kicked out of the country because they tell the truth. You need to be worried when things like that are happening, but they've been happening for a long time. They murdered Martin Luther King because he told the truth, because he was against war. But we have an anniversary for his birth on the day that fascism is brought in the time when we all are willing to pay our taxes to destroy the planet for our children and grandchildren with violence, weapons, and war. And we're so afraid and so separated and so lacking in sustenance of being in humanity. We've been so dehumanized ourselves that we're willing to do these horrible things. We're willing to join in the chorus of violence and hate and war that then trickles down to women in red states that don't have access to healthcare. It's healthcare that they don't have access to. It's the care of the human. And so, I've been working for the last many decades on cultivating a peace economy, even just in my peace movement, because we forget we're in this culture. We think we're different. It's like there's something that happens here where we live out of a story instead of out of reality. And we to unpack ourselves from the stories and to be present with reality, to be present with what is hard. It's a literally breaking of an addiction, and it's hard, and it takes being in a community to do that. But those communities exist, and those communities are vibrant, and those communities really don't give a shit what Trump is doing right now. They are building a future, and it is beautiful. But so I say, anybody that needs to pay attention to that madness, you're taking your life, you're giving your life away, because it is going to go forth as Bibi went forth. Nobody stopping him until we can create an alternative of enough people that go, no, that's not okay. And we're going to pull the power away from you. Because right now, people keep empowering the power. It's taken a long time to get there. And it's a habit that we get into that becomes hard to break because it's literally an addiction. It's not a choice anymore. It's the only thing we know how to do. And everything around us forces us to behave that way, so that we become in agreement with the thing that's killing us. Not just us, the thing that's killing us and our community, the planet, our future, and the future of our kids, the future of our grandkids. There's somehow we've been convinced not to pay attention to that, not to plant the seeds for beauty, but instead stay in this conversation that divides and this chaos. The root of the word for war is chaos. It creates a chaos that then allows us to be used by other things that are unfamiliar. And so we think we don't know, but we all know. We all know. We can't, if we stop and we be with, we know. And I want to talk about that for a minute. So, we work on getting people out of the war economy culture and cultivating the future. Like, whatever you're doing, stop paying attention to that. Stop empowering the violence and start creating a future. And that means separating from and start practicing the habits of peace and start practicing what is true. As soon as people start practicing it, they're going, gee, we live in a field of generosity. But no, the war economy doesn't want you to know that. They want you to think you live in a world of scarcity. That's why there must be homeless people. Because if there aren't homeless people, you might not believe you live in a world of scarcity. You might be them one day. That is what they are there for. And anybody that tells me they're going to end homelessness, it only ends when you end the war economy. Like war only ends when you end the war economy, because war just serves the war economy. It's just a tool in service of the thing that is oppressing us. So I've been saying this for a long time, but I've never known so much as right now. And I have some examples to share. I live in Los Angeles, California, where for the last 2 weeks, we've been suffering fires. And my community that I lived in for 30 years, Pacific Palisades and Malibu and the kind of Santa Monica Canyon, it's burned down. It's a war zone. It's a war zone that people yell at me that I compare to Gaza. So here we are. Everybody is alive except for 26 people of the like couple of 100,000 that are evacuated. So it's a microcosm, right, of what's happening in Gaza. But in Gaza, we fund the weapons to burn people alive. We watch with our weapons babies being killed in incubators. We watch children being beheaded, being made afraid of a lie that Hamas beheaded babies, which is a lie. So we hold on to the lie and allow ourselves to be used by the most violent things you have ever witnessed, humanity has ever witnessed in history, because we watched it live stream. So this is like a thread of a thread of a thread of a thread less. But at the same time, it's very real and it's very horrible to the people that are here in the experience of it. And so you're in the experience as someone who's had your house burned down, and there's a rich part of town and there's a poor part of town. And there are two fires and they are incinerating neighborhoods. What happens? Who we are as humans, what do? We show up for each other. And, you know, the peace economy here kind of started in my living room. It's really robust. The mutual aid community that takes care of people, because there's always a war economy that throws people away. So there's always the need for mutual aid. So that mutual aid, not the let's end homelessness, but the mutual aid that shows up for what is to take care of humans, was there. And you know that so many people threw themselves, so many people had ideas, that what erupted were these mushrooms of care. And do you know what those people started to realize? Who they were as humans. They were loving themselves. They were falling in love with themselves and recognizing what it was to be human and loving every moment of it, and waking up every morning to throw themselves again at the situation. So I know it's inside of us. I've witnessed it for the last 2 weeks. I've witnessed, you can feel it. You can feel it like in COVID, you could feel it. You can feel the connectivity and the joy and the care. I had a house full of, fire refugees, and now they're kind of finding their way or going back to their houses, or, finding their next permanent, semi-permanent home. And one of the women is staying at a hotel down the street. She came over for dinner last night, and she said, everybody in the hotel, she said, it's they all probably 2/3 of them lost their house. The rest of us are waiting to go back to a neighborhood that's a war zone. And to a person, all I feel is gratitude. They lost their house. They are so grateful. They're over helping the people in Altadena that lost everything. People in Pasadena and Pacific Palisades, they lost their house. They didn't lose everything. They have money. The jazz singers, the jazz musicians that have been helping over in Altadena, they lost everything. They're 80 years old. They lost their house, the thing they had worked so hard to have. They lost their music. They lost their instruments. When you go over there, standing alone without even a car or a place to go, because their whole community burned down. So I feel like it's a microcosm. We're talking about, healthcare not being allowed to women as the kind of seed for this. But it's like I want us all to go to that seed and see what is it when you feel that you can do right now. Because you know what? Even Trump is saying that. Even Trump is saying, do it locally. I'm not going to affect state law. So power has to build small. It has to build where you are. It has to build in community, and it has to build meeting the moment, meeting the need of the moment. Because our abstraction, the fact that we live in so many abstractions, and we've talked about them here at Humanity Rising, it's like it allows us to be used to do really horrible, violent things by being used by lies. So practicing being related to the truth, being related to reality, being related to the need of the moment is going to make you so much smarter. It's going to make you so much, and I don't want to say happier, I want to say more fulfilled, because our drive to happiness is also a little empty. It's also not fulfilling. It's a carrot out here that you never really get, but it takes you into really dark places. And so my other very exciting thing to share is that, I have a campaign called China's Not Our Enemy. And Congress put a bill forth last year to spend $1.4 billion of your dollars to make the world hate China. Literally a bill, the Hate China bill, to create propaganda so people will hate China. And then there's another bill that says we have to close down TikTok because China owns it and they're spying on you, which is all a lie. And we saw that happen in Congress where the guy from Malaysia says, I'm from Malaysia, when the guy's trying to make him from China. But really, that bill was funded by AIPAC because what was happening on TikTok was actually real conversations about what was happening in Palestine. And the people in Israel said, we have a problem, you American members of Congress, and that problem is TikTok, because people get to talk to each other and they get to tell the truth, and we can't allow that. So we've got to close down TikTok. So already, the shells, and you're already used about hating China, so it's about China, so you're going to sign up to close down TikTok. Well, guess what? This is what democracy looks like. The people on TikTok are like, you're going to take away our TikTok? We're going to mess with you. We're just going to give ourselves to the Chinese government. So we're going to sign up on the Chinese app that actually is in China and give us them our information and show you how afraid we are of having our information owned by China. You own our information. We heard that from, we've heard that for a really long time. Snowden told us that, over a decade ago. So they show up for Red Note, a Chinese app. In a day, it's translatable. I mean, that's how fast China works, right? In a day, it's created an interface of relationality so that the Chinese and Americans could talk to each other. The beauty on Red Note is so amazing. I can't take myself away from it. I put Medea on it and she was just like, what are you talking about? And then I lose her into the Red Note love. Oh my God, that's so sweet. Oh my God, that's so sweet. Oh my God. And your heart's pounding for love and connection. So there's love and connection instead of separation and isolation and loneliness that we get used by. So I just want to say it's when we pivot away, when we don't agree to what power is saying, when we don't buy it and we aren't owned by it, that's what women are doing. That's what you're witnessing, Tom. It's like we are still going to speak truth. And it's women and men. I want to say Jeffrey Sachs. I love that, Jeffrey Sachs has been out there for 3 years speaking truth to power, because the United States mainstream media won't let Jeffrey Sachs speak on mainstream media. But he's been speaking around the world, and it got back to Trump, who now believes that, Bibi Netanyahu is one of the great awfuls on the planet. So it's these people that are willing to speak truth that aren't allowed to be on mainstream media because, God forbid, you hear the truth. So the other thing is find the voices that are denied you. Find those people that are being persecuted because they tell the truth. That's a place you can show up. First of all, to listen, and then to not let them be silenced. You know, right now, it's not letting voices be silenced. And that's what they did to Martin Luther King. And, you know, Mrs. King won't be silenced. They did it to JFK, and maybe we're going to find out what really happened. But President Eisenhower said to Kennedy before he took office, your only job is to keep your brake on the military industrial congressional complex. And by doing that, he was murdered. RFK was going to do the same. He was murdered. So when you look at the problem and you see how metastasized and toxic it's become, go back to the roots, because we need to start there. Go to your community. The war economy is destroying someone there. Look at what's going to happen with ICE. There are people that are going to be ripped out of their homes and ripped away from their families. There are women who need care. There are men who need care. There are everything in between and transforming themselves that need care. And it's not about the separations, and it's not about whose rights over another people's rights. Let's quit separating ourselves from each other. Let's quit hating anyone. And also, I just want to say, I went to the inaugural. From the minute I got on the plane, I was shocked. The MAGA hats, the Trump hats, and I'm like, okay, here we go. The love, the connection, the conversation. The man sitting next to me, after about 20 minutes, we looked at each other and I was like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And he was like, yeah, I was not expecting this. The guy in front of me with the Trump hats making best friends with the 50-year-old member, you know, citizen of the blackest city in America, Washington, D.C. They're having a conversation. They're getting to know each other. And by the end of the flight, they're besties. And he offers him a ride home. The woman on the next corner, I have, you know, I stand with genocide on my computer that's facing her, and she looks at it and she goes, I'm with you, girlfriend. She has a MAGA hat on. The whole plane, I walk down it, everyone's having a conversation. It hasn't looked like that since the 70s or since we got, you know, cell phones. I'm like, whoa, this is feeling like a place I like. The hotel I stay in DC, I make friends with my outrageous outfit, with my, I had, you know, my Palestinian keffiyeh. I'm like, you know, people are talking to me. They want to understand. Explain that to me. Why do you wear that? You know, what's happening here? What about genocide? They're not like, I hate you because you know, they're curious. The march, the Women's March, was so beautiful. And we have the anti-war peace contingent, and I have stickers, you know, feminists stand against genocide. And we're like the front of the march, the kind of democratic women are walking by. They're all the young women grabbing my stickers, wanting my stickers. Because they know where they stand, even though their party doesn't stand there. It's like, and they're not afraid. They come grabbing, I'm with you. So we're watching power do one thing, but what are we doing as people? That's what matters. And quit finger wagging and, oh my God, the ugliness of the hate is on my side of the line. Can we just see everyone as humans? Can we start by not dehumanizing? What is happening in Gaza is about dehumanizing. We are dehumanizing a people. It is worse than slavery. It is worse than the genocide of the indigenous peoples. They at least got to fight back. They at least had dignity. Well, sorry. I mean, the Palestinians have more dignity than anyone on the planet. But the undignified way that we, the American people, are funding the weapons that are slaughtering a people and destroying a whole home, a home of a people for millennia. Olive trees that are hundreds, thousands of years old, destroyed. That's a destruction of history, of a people, of peace. Palestinians is a peace economy. And we look at it and it's beautiful. Why are we destroying those that live a peace economy, that know the connection to nature, that know the connection to each other is all there is? Go there. Listen to Palestinian poetry. Be connected to life, because we're serving death. So, like, make that agreement, you know, I will serve life where I live. I will create a home sweet home. Power, it's toxic, it's stupid, it will use you. Empower yourself and those around you to take care of each other, to take care of the planet. And that weapons and militarization are never the answer. They don't bring safety and security. Our connectivity does, our relationship does. The most safety and security being created right now is with the people between the United States and China. We are beautiful, we're human beings. Each one of us is beautiful. And we're not special. We're just beautiful. And we're here and we have life, which is what I hear from the people that just survived their houses being. What I hear from them is, I'm alive. I'm here. What can I do? How can I serve? Sorry, I talked too long, Tom.
You absolutely did not talk too long, and there's a lot of places I want to go with this conversation, but I want to start. You were talking about happiness, and you know, for me, happiness is fleeting. I'm not opposed to happiness at all. I try and have it in my life, but what you're bringing onto the screen, what you're bringing in your words is joy. And
So we at the peace economy, we have the cycle of reconnection. And it's like, first, when you kind of wake up to what you live in, and you have to go through a little bit of grief, and you really have to grieve because it's a real loss. And then you go into care because we've forgotten how to care for each other, which leads you to joy, which leads you to celebration. And then you keep going deeper, you know, and it's, I would say I do that transition about 9 times a day. So, you know, it's the cycle of reconnection, because instead we just block ourselves, steal ourselves, and don't do anything, which then destroys life inside of us. So yeah, that's why, you know, thank you for bringing up joy. It's like joy, that fulfillment that just arises from you, like a laughter that it just does something to you that takes over and nourishes every little cell in your being. I like that one better.
I want to, you know, just point it out, but also just a huge thank you for bringing the joy to this conversation, bringing that energy and exuding joy that each of us, you know, as we watch this episode and watch this conversation, have the opportunity to see joy.
Well, that's your resistance. There you go. That's what resistance looks like. Love and joy, that's our resistance. Community, love, care, that's the resistance.
Well, the next place I wanted to take the conversation is, you know, you were speaking to it, and I refer to it often. You know, each of us are like fish in water. We don't know what water is. And so I would, you know, like to drill down a bit into how do we help people understand the reality that they're seeing, choosing to see, have been trained to see. How do we help people, you know, unshackle themselves from the life that they're living to embrace the reality? I mean, we know as a species, whether we're talking on a biological, neurological, sociological, psychological, we are hardwired for collaboration and cooperation. It's who we are as a species. And so, you know, we see it in these moments of crisis. We see it whether it's the fires in LA or anywhere that humanity has existed. When there's a natural disaster, when there's anything that shakes us out of our perceived reality, people are there for each other. They care for each other. They show the love. They show the things that you've been sharing and speaking to in LA. And so my question is, How do we shake people out of the lives that they're living to embrace the reality of who we are?
So yeah, let's start with the people. So start with the self-responsibility of yourself.
Mhm.
You know, I think of myself, the integrity of my life has created a tuning fork that can attune people because I've made hard choices. I haven't bought into the game. So there's an attunement that can happen inside of ourselves. And I think we know that about people who live lives of authenticity, especially people who, you know, drive into the thing that they love, right? And they just become good at it because you do it over and over and you make choice. You're not pulled away from, you're pulled into by the love of, right? So the first thing is that we've been acculturated. Our education system sucks. It makes us stupid. And, you know, it's really a crime. The education system in the United States is a crime. But like Ivan Illich told us that in the 50s, but we didn't do anything about it. We doubled down on making people stupid. You know, it's like, you know, in my 70s. So I also like have this, like, it's just my generation, but no, it's we've become stupider. I mean, like, I have conversations with my grandkids and I'm just like, what, who, where did you, what happened? And it's not their fault. So that everything, you know, I start with, it's no one's fault. And, you know, it's your responsibility, but it's not your fault. So, you know, you need to start with the core of yourself. Always in activism, people come to me like, how do I change my Aunt Elliot? You know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, that's not your task. If we just pull back to being in relationship with what we are in relationship with. And for some reason, it's very hard because we think we're holding up the sky. Do you know what I mean? It's just like we've been created so narcissistically. We have to recognize how stupid we have been made by being in an empire. The rest of the world looks at us and goes, what the fuck? I mean, like, really, if you're outside the United States, they just don't get it. The Chinese, they're just like, please explain. It's so far from their culture of connectivity and care and nonsense. When they talk about like abortion issues or trans issues or gay issues or women's issues, when it lands there, they're like, we're just doing our stuff. When we need something, it's not about a woman, me as a woman, it's me as a human. It's me as a member of this society. So if we look at just the separation, I mean, going there a lot, I've started to really think about the Western religions. They separate us from ourselves from the beginning, that there's this higher power than ourselves is the original sin of separation that doesn't happen in Asian religions. They have a connection. My job as a human is to care for me, you, my family, my community, the bigger country, and the world. They're not separated from me. I'm not separate from them. When I say, what do you think about the US coming to war on China? They're like, I'm worried about the people in the United States. Who in the United States is going to respond? That's human. I'll tell you another story. I went to Pakistan to meet with the drone victim families because Obama was droning innocent people in Pakistan that lived in freaking nowhere that had nothing. And so we went to meet with the families and met with this tribal chief, and he's telling us the story of how he went to you know, drive 2 hours away to get food, to make a party. His son just graduated from college and he was going to be the teacher of the village, and he wanted to make it really special. And he came back and his son and his brother were like pieces of burning flesh hanging off the walls of his house that had been destroyed. And he was banging on the table, I just want to kill an American soldier. I just want to kill an American soldier. And you could feel his grief and his anger. And one of the CODEPINK women said, if you had a drone and you could fly it over the United States, what would you do? And he said, nothing. I would kill innocent people. That's who we are. That's who we are. To look in that mirror of the decency and the humanity that lives in the world that we have been made to hate. So start with yourself and remember you can't see yourself. Mm-hmm. Start with that truth, as we cannot see ourselves. So we tell ourselves stories. In the United States, you get to like tell yourself stories and believe them, like democracy. And so you can only create transformation in a community, find a community, build a community, but together you make commitments. Showing up for those commitments is how you start to come to reality. Who am I? How do I show up? How do others show up? How do I have a conversation about it? How do I make it not about me? How do I see how everybody's different and comes from different values and different education backgrounds and different understandings? How do I start there? And you know what? As soon as you get in a community, man, you are so much smarter. You are so much smarter. And then together, when you notice a need and you try to come together and say, what can we offer out of ourselves to that need? Oh my God. This happens when we start this, we do these 1.5 hour things, you know, a commitment every week for 1.5 hours. I can tell you that like everybody comes out of the first one, like, where did that come from inside of me? That we don't even access the smartest parts of ourselves, that we don't even understand we live in little narrow boxes, or this is the only place that's comfortable, because if you stretch out of that you're going to be uncomfortable. Resilience is what is needed for this time in history around the globe, because we've so messed up systems. Mm-hmm. We've messed up systems. We've messed up governments. We have crushed every government with neoliberalism, that we are about to see a level of poverty and a level of like need like never before. We did that. Neoliberalism out of this country did that. And it is a destabilization that is frightening. But you can be okay. That's frightening. I can be with that. I can look at it and I can look into the belly of it, and it crushes my interiors. And then I go, okay, so what is mine to do? What is mine to do? What do I actually know? What can I actually bring? And that starts locally. It starts with, what does a need look like? We've forgotten even what needs look like. We have just a bunch of wants. Oh my God. Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, he called the Chinese like, they're like Popeye. They can make stuff happen. They're really good at producing, really big on top. Like they've been eating their spinach, but they have really skinny legs because they don't consume. I was like, they don't consume because they're fulfilled. They don't consume because instead of going shopping, they're out dancing and singing and playing and being in nature. They don't need to fill emptiness. How crazy are you? And their economy does not depend on consumption. It depends on care. Oh my God. So Americans read that in the New York Times and they think, oh, we're so good because we're consuming. Let's go consume more. That's emptiness. Consumption and destroying the planet, that creates emptiness. Taking care of each other. The other thing that happens when you're in China is everyone is singing and dancing. Culture's been stolen from us. I remember back 40 years ago when they took art and all that beautiful stuff out of education for kids, where the most education happens, where when you play in a band, like what it is to harmonize together, what it is to learn together, because that's actually a place where you learn, where the fruit of the labor is there. It's not abstract test about, algebra. It's a connective tissue of real learning, of real, it goes here. All the things about the real learning got taken away. So it starts here, because for some reason, what the empire makes us do is think we can solve all the problems of the world, narcissism on steroids, while we destroy the world, that we all believe that we have some magical power, that we can fix things. And then that idea is then driven into elections, where we all engage in an election that is as fake as anything on the planet. And we tell other people they don't have fair elections. We don't have a fair election. It's $6 billion was spent on election. Who do you think's win? The rich. And then what are they doing? Oh my God. The guy from Oracle, I can't think of his name, yesterday admitted.
Larry Ellison.
Larry Ellison. He admitted, they're all the gloves are so off that they admit to the horrors of their behavior like every day. Like, pay attention. It's now on mainstream media. You don't even have to know from like the side. It's like Larry Ellison said, well, as soon as we have AI, you're all done. We're just going to use you. That is already happening. It's kind of like, oh, here's Trump and we have fascism, and Biden says we have an oligarchy. We've had an oligarchy for 40, 50 years. What are you talking about? You made it happen. You were there for 40 years. giving it away to the rich with every vote. And then it's like Trump brought the oligarchy. I mean, that people will believe that because that's all they get. Because we just go shake our heads when the New York Times writes it. New York Times wrote a scathing, like silly takedown of me. Not a word was right. I have all my friends that I say, are you reading the New York Times? It lies to you. It uses you. After they read the piece, they're like, oh my God, you're right. I was like, thanks, New York Times, you did me a favor. So the power is overstepping. Really big time. Don't overstep with it. Step in the new direction. Matter of fact, this week we're launching a peace clock because the doomsday clock is about to go closer to midnight. And I know this is a big one for my community here. Closer to midnight. Why? Because we're in a new Cold War and it is horrible. Like, why does no one in the Middle East go to help the Palestinians? Because Israel has nuclear weapons. They have nuclear weapons and they get to do this to the Palestinian people because no one can get in their way. They have nuclear weapons. So it doesn't have to drop because he turned Gaza into Nagasaki without the nuclear weapon because he had the nuclear weapon. It's not détente. It's a level of violence that no human should ever have to suffer or witness. Our psyches are being destroyed. So I would say another reason that you cultivate a local peace economy because right now your psyche is being destroyed. If you want to go back to being human while AI is breathing down your neck, the local peace economy is it. Come back to being a human, or you are just going to be a cog in their wheel and you are not going to know what is up or down, and you are going to be used and your kids are going to be used, and we're on our way to non-existence.
So can you talk a bit more about the peace clock?
Oh, sure. So I'm looking at the doomsday clock, and my bestie, Jerry Brown, is like the guy that, turns in, and he's the president of the doomsday clock. And it's a very good thing. It was made by Einstein and Oppenheimer to like, oh my God, we've created this hell on earth and it's taking us to doom. We got to pay attention. We got to pull it back. We've got to take the weapons away. We can't have them. Let's get rid of this pox we've put on humanity. And, like I just described, it's a pox on humanity because what you're watching is because of that weapon.
Yep.
So, and it keeps moving closer, and they're going to move it closer on the 28th. And I'm like, that's not a really good thing to just keep looking at doom. It's not helping anyone. And it's just not serving the movement. Everybody's just like, it's bigger than me. I don't know what to do. Blah, blah. It's just, we're getting closer to doom. Oh my God. Like it benefits the checkout, as I say. So instead we've made a peace clock, and it's like, let's take our hand on that second hand and move it towards peace. Like, let's let's pivot. It's all about the pivot. Y'all, it's all about the pivot. When you find yourself angsting about what's happening, that's them using you. That anxiety, that fear, that's them using you. Take it back. We have on the piece of, and the peace economy book is for free. You can download it. You can just go online and see how do I start divesting myself from the habits. But it's the pivot. It's I'm not going to be used by them. It's the joy. It's the celebration. I'm going to be in my community as they're breathing down my neck. I'm going to find the people that ICE is going to go after, and they're going to be living in my house. It's just like, what is the thing that you can do that is immediate? It will make you smarter. Don't think someone else knows. All those people that are working for mainstream media, they're funded by the military industrial complex that is stealing your life away from you. Why would you listen to that? Do you need to know what they're telling you? Read a good novel that connects you to humanity. I mean, like the fact that we the arts, culture, or how we connect to each other, how we tell each other's stories. I mean, Netflix, so everything's been privatized. If the thing that is part of the commons has been privatized, make your own. Make it a commons again. Because you know what? Storytelling has been privatized. Netflix is owned by the State Department, and it's telling you stories that are going to really mess with your brain and make you believe in militarism and controls and violence and separation and fears. And it's going to make you just fodder for the AI to use you. while denying you the stories of Palestinian people. So think about the campfire that is the commons. We've been telling our stories all along. Why do we tell stories? So we know ourselves. Remember, we can't know ourselves except through each other's stories. So be careful, pay attention. What am I getting? The guy who told us the story that won the, in the Oscars last year, about the banality of evil. We're living in the banality of evil. He told the story. He had us look at ourselves. And he accepted that because he was trying to hold a mirror up for us to see ourselves. Instead, he got attacked as an anti-Semite. I mean, that you can use a word anti-Semite against the people that are actually pro-Semitic and have them go to jail, have them lose their jobs, their careers. The careers they have are beautiful. Care careers. Pay attention to the people in care careers, the care of education, the care of a doctor. The doctors and hospitals in this country are not screaming that the doctor administrator of the hospital in Palestine is being tortured in a jail in Israel. What hypocritic oath? Yeah, hypocritic oath did they sign? Super hypocrites. It's not Hippocratic. It's not care of. Where's the care of? So kindly holding people accountable to words, starting with you and your own, starting to unpack them, understand them, have compassion for you, your community, have compassion, have curiosity. Don't think you know. That is the other thing in America is like, you think you know. When you go around the world, like people in conversation, they're just curious. They don't think they know anything. They're curious. They want to know. They want to know because we're always learning. And they're wanting to be a knower in the real sense, not a I know and you're, you don't. They want to know the breadth of it. They're bigger. It's like, oh, wow, I don't know everything. But we think we know everything. Like, start there. I mean, there's so many places to start, but like divesting yourself from the thing that wants to use you, you're going to find out it's so hard because it's an addiction, because it feeds emptiness. Feed yourself real things, and that's why when you get in the community and you start to serve the community you live in, it connects you to truth, it connects you to reality, and all this will still be going on. It's a circus. The circus will still go on. It'll affect people, but you're not, unless you actually have a lever on power, you are not going to stop it. And I have to say that to peace activists all the time. You didn't start this war. You're not going to stop this war. You can build a movement. You can help people be smarter. You can help people understand the world they live in. And we can build a movement big enough to be the power that pulls the rug underneath the people that have stolen power with their money and their stupid friends. But, we can't think they're going to act for us is being crazy.
Two things you shared I'd like to explore a bit more. So with many viewers here on Humanity Rising have heard me say this before. Of the 8 billion people on the planet, well over 7 billion of us are living in some version of peace every day. And yet that's not the story that's being represented. That's not the story that's being told. And so I love the peace clock that you're creating, and I'm hoping that it will more accurately reflect the state of the world. That in fact, the vast majority of us are living in some version of peace every day. So just want to applaud you for that. The second piece I wanted to pick up on is around community, and it has to start at the local community. It's got to the experience you had on the plane flying to DC. And how do we help create and support that movement at the local community level?
Well, it's like the way you were articulating it, how do we help and support? I think we go back to how do I be part of it.
Hmm.
The sense of separation and help and support is like, how do I be connected? So like I say, it's like you can take your neighborhood and sit around your living room and say, oh, usually we start with a question so that we can know who each other is, like what value do you start you make your choices from? Just in doing that, we find out like what's a value, so whatever you start with, it'll make things show up in the room. And I've used it for a long time. Like I used it with helping gang members that, had a whole project and we were helping gang members. And, and again, trying to figure out why this horrible system of violence existed and was. So I'm trying to understand. And so we come together as a community and ask a question at the beginning. And one day I was like, oh, I think they should just all see men are all alike. They have the same problems. And in my naivete, I was like, they're just guys, So I pulled together a billionaire and the governor and a member of Congress and a famous football player and an actor, all black in a room, going around the room saying, what did I learn? That when we started with the word father, everybody reflecting, every single one of those gang members' dad had been in the war in Vietnam. And that war had come home with them. And they were addicted and there was no care. So it's the thing that sent me to Washington to stop the war on Iraq. It was like, what did I learn in my community? In my trying to understand why there was a war zone in my own community, took me to standing in front of, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to stop the war. But more importantly, I wanted to stand there for all the people that were being confused by what was happening, that there was someone standing against the lie, because people know, somewhere they know. And I was standing there for all the women who knew this was a lie and knew war was the wrong thing. And they all came and they stood and they, it's like, it's just, for me, it's not to stop. It's like to stand in the truth that I know. And where is that? It's not a bludgeon. When truth is a bludgeon, do you know who's the nicest people to us? Always were Bush and his folks. We're disarming at Code Pink. What you resist persists. We know that. But we're going to show up with our truth and it's going to be beautiful and it's going to make you smile. And we're going to be in color. We're going to be in pink, which is disarming itself. And we're going to do theater and we're going to sing. Do you know that we did actions this weekend in DC and we did them at Union Station as people were arriving with their MAGA hats and we're all singing peace songs with us. That's a connective tissue, it's just like pieces, like you said, it's there. Mm-hmm. Peace is there. It's what we are as humans. It's what we long for. It's why the Chinese government is they promise their community, the people, peace. And they'll, they want that. They know that's a value. Why do we not know that's a value? That's, that's kind of interesting. This little pocket of the world, this 330 billion, along with the NATO people that we've sucked into our thing, because they were afraid, we sucked them into it. This thing about weapons. Mm-hmm. Weapons are used by stupid, mean, cruel, dehumanized people. Create the conditions where weapons aren't necessary. When you're in China, it's 1,400,000 people. They have very few police and they don't have weapons. Yep. So we've just been like, we're indoctrinated in the United States into forms of slavery that we are also enslaved, that we think we're not. And the punitive system that we live inside of, more people in jail than anywhere in the world, the punitive system that doesn't work comes from slavery. Mm-hmm. And so if you're all in the culture of it, it's like going back to what am I in the culture of? So I think it's starting with curiosity and connectivity. I am not separate. If you're worried about Trump and the power he has is because of the separation that he creates in his bombacity. Mm-hmm. And so there's his power, right? He creates that separation that then he hooks people with. Well, what's your resistance to that? What does resistance look like? It looks like not being that. Okay, I'm not going to be that. Then guess what? You're going to find out how many times in a day you are that. How many times a day you separate. It's like, oh, how do I know my community? How do I build my community? How do I pay attention to where the war economy is hurting those in my community? How do I go? The one we did here in Venice is like, okay, so we gathered in my living room. Then it's like, who's most of effect of the war economy in our community? We found out we had 1,500 homeless youth in our neighborhoods. And so it's like, okay, well, let's go find out who they are and what they need. So we went to the beach on Saturdays and we got to know some, and they said, we're hungry. So we made sandwiches and we brought them, in the trunks of our cars, and we stood in parking lots and we fed a bunch of young kids and got to know them. What else do you need? Oh, well, it would be really great if we had a backpack to keep our stuff in. So then we went to the community and we collected backpacks, and then we collected blankets, and then we collected food cards, and we just kept listening to what was needed by them. We didn't come in with we know what you need. Never did we ever think that. We would listen, and then we would go from what we had to how would we offer that? So I can tell you what happened in those couple of years, that eventually we ended up with Thursday nights at the Baptist church around the corner from me. And then people would bring hot food, and we got doctors and we got therapists to come. I mean, it really became a robustness of caring, because it's always about love. It's always about life. If you just start from I serve love and life, it will transform how you behave in every day. And so the way it then manifested, I want to say, in the big, was that LA is run by neighborhood councils. And when the neighborhood council election came, and we have, lots of homelessness in our community, and people hate them and they're horrible, but we taught everybody else to love and to care for. So they ran a slate of safe and secure. Let's make Venice safe and secure. Usually 9,000 people vote in a neighborhood election. 34,000 people voted in the neighborhood election. Wow. To go to your the hate is very little people. It's very small. But it's the people with money and power. And because the power over starts with the hate. I'm different, so we won over that safe and secure thing so bad. They were trounced. They got to see how small they were, how powerless they really are, even though they're rich. And the people who live in the community that had been in the care of, that knew these were human beings that didn't want to be in the streets, but the system and society had created conditions for that to happen. They were there. So I want to say it creates a culture that then becomes the bigger culture, that becomes the culture of care. But it has to start at the core. It's we keep wanting to fix it way out here while it's on top of a toxic waste dump. And I was saying this to a friend who's a capitalist, and we always argue because he wants to make it, good capitalism. He's got a company that turns waste into green technology. There's good capitalism. So we are all, it's I always try to show him it's the thing itself, the lipstick on a pig is not what it is. It's not the lipstick, it's the pig. So the other day he came over for dinner, and I just do me. He sent me a poem yesterday morning that he'd crafted out of what I said. Because fast and furious, the fires came fast and furious. What's going to become is fast and furious. What is needed is resilience and care that is ready for that, like it was in LA. They call it shock. Trump. The lightning struck from nowhere, as if the sky didn't turn black for years, as if the smell of burning wasn't already in the air. We watched the slide, like drunks on a tilted floor, war after war, a roll of dice, arming the killers and blaming the corpses. When someone screamed about it, we told them to shut up, called them ungrateful, called them naive. We logged in, watched the technocrats build new golden cages, called it progress. Let them sell our words back to us with a side of ads. Truth bent, cracked, broke. We stayed. We always stayed. We wanted the easy fix, a ballot box Band-Aid, a party painted in brighter colors. But their pockets were lined with the same dirty green. Their promises just polished versions of the lies we've been fed since the start. And now here we are, a nation choking on its own shadow, demanding to know how it got so dark. It's not redemption that comes next. Redemption is too clean. What comes next is harder, a slow reckoning, the unglamorous work of seeing things as they are and choosing to live anyway, to not look away. No grand speeches, no easy heroes, just small, deliberate refusals, a million quiet acts of repair. That's how the tide turns, not all at once, but like water finding its way through cracks in the stone. The horizon isn't promised, but it's still there, and how we reach it will define who we are.
Thanks for sharing. As we bring Jim back into the conversation, I had a couple of things I wanted to put into the space. A dear friend of mine, Aaron Hurst, he and his wife moved to Seattle about 10 years ago because of a job that she was taking. And they arrived in Seattle, and it was a particularly hard, they were moving from Brooklyn, and it was a particularly hard move for them in terms of connection and community. And Seattle has about 60,000 new people arriving in the city each year. And he spent the last year doing some research to try and understand. And he launched earlier this, or later part of last year, the U.S. Chamber of Connection. And he's working with the mayor's office. He's working with business leaders and community leaders to create connection in Seattle, with the goal of rolling it out to all cities around the country where there's interest. And it's very much speaking to what you're talking about. So I wanted
and I think, Tom, what that also speaks to, if people go, how does this scale? And I say, if something works, it scales, because people want things that work. And so, it's like, as soon as something is started, like refrigerators, for the home, like as soon as that worked in one city, it was like, how did it get everywhere else? Because it's like the things that work. What we've forgotten with social media is we know how to communicate. We are the mycelia, we are the mushrooms, and we still talk to each other like the trees. Yep. Even though we think we don't, we do. And it's really how information, I never read a newspaper. I don't read the news at all. And I know everything that's happening. It's like, I don't need to have my, self dulled down by somebody, trying to also, or the ads that it's like, what is that doing for me? Nothing. So, what do I know? I know a lot about people. I know a lot about needs. I know a lot about what makes us human and caring. And I know how beautiful humans are. And, isn't that enough? Because from there, like, such beautiful things grow. And I feel like I'm just Jodie Appleseed planting seeds. And then when I go back and I see what happened, I'm just like, wow, like, look at what that apple tree did and how many people it's feeding and covering and nourishing. And yeah, it's inside of us waiting to be born.
Yep. Well, thank you for that. And we had billed the program as Women's Sovereignty. And a number of folks have been asking in the chat. And from my perspective, you've been speaking to human sovereignty. And I'm wondering if there's anything specific that, we bring Jim back into the conversation, anything there you want to speak to specifically?
Well, I'm a feminist that's been like contorted into God knows what. So, and as a feminist, what I learned, back in the 60s was that it's all about equality and humanity. And that it's not about the separation at all. Like, to be a feminist is to be in care of all, and to be in service to all, and to, raise my voice for all. So it's in the separations that we lose ourselves. And, you know, like I said, it's like I've seen women do horrible things and beautiful things. I've seen men do horrible things and beautiful things, and everyone in between. So, you know, obviously the most vulnerable have a deeper, richer connection to humanity and kindness because we know what it is. So there's a particular way in which women themselves should be followed, in the sense that they're closer to life. They're closer to what is life, what serves life. And so in that way, I would say, when in doubt, ask a woman. But when you say women's sovereignty, sovereignty is all of us. It's not a one sovereignty. Sovereignty it's a self-responsibility that's necessary for all of us. And, you know, all I would say to the men is just follow the women that are serving love and life. Don't follow the women that are serving death. You know, you're practiced at that enough. But really, sovereignty is about sovereignty. And so it is about humanity. It is about who we are as humans, and to find where we separate ourselves and connect ourselves, you know, and learn from that. You know, maybe what we need to learn is what, you know, men bring something that's valuable that has been contorted. Women bring something that's valuable that's been contorted, you know, but those that are at the strongest place of the heel of the boot have the most to tell us. Because we've been made dumb by being far away from what we're doing at the boot level and not understanding. So, you know, like I said, with, you know, going to speak with the kids, it's like, I'm learning. I mean, I learn every day about the violence of the culture I live in, to everyone, and it's the system of violence. And we're all going to get a little closer to it, I think, with Trump. You know, I'm like, what can I look? What's the silver lining? Is more Americans are going to get wiser. I hope. May we use that wiseness well. The problem is we forget. So instead of like letting the moment that makes us wise, which is what I'm working on in LA, is how do we make this moment of awareness, you know, like going places and really encouraging it to continue. How do you feel? Do you want that to continue? How does that feel for you about your kids? And making it relational when people are in the space of it. But it also starts with it not being you. It's like starting with, where is the community I'm going to learn about myself, learn about them, and learn about the community I live in. And, you know, I've watched amazing things. I watched people go from introverts to extroverts to like serving, you know, a global, project but it's so rooted in exactly where they were, in exactly who they were in the community they started with. So it's not about what am I doing out there? What am I doing right now? Well, and how am I answering it? Will craft the thing that you have to offer that will grow. It's just like the apple tree.
Yeah, thank you. It reminds me of, and I've plugged the book multiple times this week. Father Greg Boyle from your community in LA has his new book out, Cherished Belonging, and I have recommended it to everybody because it speaks to what you're talking about in the show today.
Yeah, I've known Gregory for a long time. When I was running Jerry's Presidential, he always gave us some of his young men to come on the trip with him to give them an experience of what that was like. He's such a huge heart. I mean, there's this human that serves life and love, you know, and just never lets any of the things structures has to throw at him get in the way. It takes everything and turns it into something just that serves life. And
Thank you.
Joy and delight and joy, you know. The great.
Thank you so much, Jodie. Just as we bring the session to a close, I want to underscore two things you've said and then ask a question. One is, I think you really distilled the essence of our time when you said things are happening fast and furious in an escalating way, and what we need to cultivate is resilience and caring. I just want to say that's, I think, utterly profound in relationship to what we need in our time. And the other thing I just want to acknowledge and appreciate is Gaza forever in my heart as part of your backdrop today, because I think the United States and Israel sank to a level of depravity in Gaza that I fear Trump will even deepen. And for us to take that in about ourselves will take superhuman effort, because it challenges that which we most deeply seek to deny about who we really are as a settler colonial people supporting settler colonialism in Palestine. And the question that I have is, given the plethora of challenges that are out there, as you view the next 6 months or year for CODEPINK, what are the priorities that you're setting for the organization, and how can we best support CODEPINK? Because everybody knows, I think CODEPINK is the cutting edge of the cutting edge for the peace and human liberation movement at all kinds of levels. So how you're prioritizing and what you're setting forth as pressure points is important for us all to know.
Okay, so I just want to start out with we're not doing anything different than we've done for the last 22 years. So it's not,
We're just going to keep on keeping on.
We relate to the system. We don't pretend it's changing under parties, or we always do the same thing. We educate, inspire, and activate to build a movement to pull the rug out from power. While we're doing that, we scratch at, we shine a light on, and we disturb power so that it doesn't do what it's doing without having to feel the bite of the mosquito. So it doesn't get away with it with lube, it's just like, no, we are in the way. We are going to be the grinding thing that stops you a little bit, that makes you turn around, makes you have to answer for what you're doing. So I would say that's, a lot of what we do is, where you see us the most is in Congress. What you're seeing in those videos is us showing you how stupid, violent, hateful, and really just idiots these members of Congress are, that you're putting your power into, that you give all your time to, and saying, please go take care of your community. So that's what we've always done from day one. The other thing is, we have communities around the country, and they work doing the same thing locally. So a campaign at CODEPINK is always to educate, inspire, and activate. So, like I said, it's like power is going to do its thing. It's got power and money. It's on crack cocaine. No matter what we say, it's not going to get off its crack cocaine. We're not taking it into a therapy session to unpack it from whatever is driving it. We don't pretend like we can end war until we end the war economy. We are trying to change the culture. We are trying to take people off of it and work relationally. The last year, 15 months, the ceasefire resolutions that we've gotten across the country, what did those do? They created local peace economies. First, people came together, and we started with cities. Every single one of them, we didn't have a person in the city council. It was relational. It was stories. It was the community that cared, that came in a city council meeting and shared what was actually happening to human beings. And those most stalwart, angry people, by the time we were done, they voted for a ceasefire. But that's where we could unpack it. So we couldn't unpack it in Congress. They are owned the stupidity of Jeffries and Hakeem Jeffries, oh my God. So it's like, you see it, you have to witness, okay, that is that.
Totally.
Phoebe is that. It's like, where can we make a difference in hearts and minds and love? It's been locally. And so out of we were part of hundreds of encampments wow, you get to see the violence in the country you live in. That's a teacher on steroids. Those people, they're young. The education they got in that process about the country they live in is profound. They're on fire. But you know what they do? They take care of each other. What they learned was nobody is here to save us. We're here to take care of each other. And they learned it like it's in their bones. You know, some people listening have to learn it like you're going to have to learn it like by practice. It's in their bones. They teach it. And what did they do? They created local peace economies. They're, oh my God, like every morning I wake up, I have like threads on Signal and WhatsApp of where they're meeting, who they're getting, like they've connected themselves to their community, and then they were there for the fires. So they've created that resilience. They're not, at the end of last year, it's like the community of Code Pink, they were not worn down. They were not in like, they were in, I'm ready for whatever's coming. I am resilient. I am in love. And I am building a movement that is eventually going to take the rug out from underneath these stupid people. They didn't sign up to be told by any of us that you're going to affect this insane person. He's insane. And to do that, it has to happen locally. And so a BDS campaign, our campaign against Netflix, what does that do? It teaches you that your mind is being used by Netflix, that it owns the commons of the storytelling, and it gets to deny you Palestinian stories. People don't like that. That's the most we've ever grown as an organization around the Netflix. And now we're going after Angelina Jolie, who's not going to win for Best Actress because she's spoken out against for the Palestinian people and saying, well, why don't you then talk to your bosses and say, where are the stories of the Palestinian people since you're already being punished? Double down. When you're already being punished, double down. When they try to make us silent, we double down.
Good for you. Good for you. Good for you.
So it's like, you know, they're attacking us. We have lawsuits. We just double down. We just get louder. You know, it's like, we just go in more places. It's like, they're like, we're going to put you in jail. It's like, and we just tell more truth. Like, you know, it's like, what can you do when it's being crazy? It's just be beautiful, be disarming, tell the truth, and take care of your community.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Jodie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Tom, do you want to tee us up for tomorrow, and then we'll bring the session to a close?
Yeah, as we finish up this first week of a 2-week series, next week we'll be focused on forgiveness under duress. We'll finish out this first week tomorrow, focusing on the other target that the administration has gone after, which is Mother Nature. And so looking forward to another rich conversation tomorrow, and just so appreciate the opportunity to shine a light on strategic resistance and what we can be doing as citizens. And just delighted to have you with us today, Jodie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jodie. Thank you all. You can join the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box, and you received it in your Zoom reminders for today. We'll see you all again tomorrow for the 5th and final session of strategies of resistance in a time